Coming up on this week's show, TJ Klune is here to talk about his brand new book, Murmuration. Plus, we recap the fall TV we've been watching.
Welcome to the Big Gay Fiction Podcast, the show for readers and writers of gay romance fiction. If you can read it, write it, watch it, or listen to it, these two guys are going to talk about it. Now, here are your hosts, Jeff Adams and Will Knaus.
Welcome to episode 55 of Jeff and Will's Big Gay Fiction Podcast.
I'm Jeff from JeffAdamsWrites.com.
And I'm Will from WillKnaus.com.
Hello.
Hello to you.
How are you?
I'm fine.
Excellent.
How are you?
I'm good. This is our second time to do this weekend. Because we're traveling.
Yeah, the Monday that this particular episode drops, we will be flying through the air, returning from Kansas City.
Yes, on our way home from GRL. Hopefully it was a good time.
I'm sure
it will be, but
yes, yeah.
And you'll probably know about it by the time this comes out because you'll have seen whatever Facebook stuff we've done along the way. So, of course, our GRL wrap-up will be along next week. Yeah. We're getting close to our one-year anniversary. That'll just be next week. Can you believe we've done this 52 weeks in a row?
I'm at a loss for words.
The mere thought of it has cracked him up completely. We'd love to know what you guys have thought of the first year of podcast. Leave us some comment on the show notes, and we'll take a look at them and read a few out on the show next week. You can leave that on the show notes for episode 55. What have you liked? Throw some criticism our way, or even better, tell us what you might want to see more of next year.
Yeah, most definitely. We've had some really nice, very kind comments so far, and we're looking forward to more. So if you have a chance in your busy lives to take a moment out of your day to check out the show notes for episode 55 and comment either on this episode or what you liked in the past year, we would greatly appreciate it.
And speaking of things along the same line, we also like reviews on the official podcast channels, like over on iTunes or on YouTube or on Google Play Music or anywhere else you happen to pick up the show. If you could go to those channels, leave a review, add some stars if they'll let you do star reviews there, that would be awesome. And you could even leave your one-year anniversary comments there because we'll be able to pick them up from there. Mm-hmm. Any place you'd like to say something, by all means, please do so. Reviews in particular help the discoverability of the show so that more people can find out about the Big Gay Fiction Podcast.
Yeah, and we can make it bigger and better in the second year.
Yes, in the second year.
I was trying to come up with something catchy and slogany, and
it's hard to do that when
totally failed.
When your new year starts in November. Let's talk about something easier.
Yes, let's do that.
TV.
Let's talk about TV.
The fall TV season has been underway for about a month. Most of the shows that we're watching have already had 3 or 4 episodes by now. But before we talk about the fall, we need to fall back to something from the summer that we only just watched in the fall, and that'd be Netflix's Stranger Things. Mm-hmm. I loved it. Mm-hmm. I thought it was clever and catchy. I loved its 80s vibe, much in the same way that I liked Dead of Summer's 80s vibe. They went back to the 80s oh so well, I thought, in that show. And it didn't scare me too much. There were only a few times that I jumped out of my skin. Mostly when they were, on the upside down. That disturbed me more than a little bit.
Yeah, I liked it a whole bunch. I thought it was really well done. I loved all of the characters, the adults, the teens, and the kids. I thought it was perfectly cast. The production design was exceptional, gorgeous. It perfectly captured the time period as we ourselves lived through that. I'm glad we eventually got around to watching it. I enjoyed it a lot. It's sort of a best of mashup of everything that was popular in the 80s, and I liked it a lot. I will say that I understand that it wasn't necessarily perfect. I mean, there were a few teeny tiny problems, at least in my view. I know there are haters out there who could, bitch about it, all day and all night. But what I just enjoyed the thing. I think what mainly pulled me in is I thought the cast was really exceptional. Each of them were playing a specific archetype, a specific 80s archetype, and despite that, they were really relatable, really genuine, and the kids are pretty fucking phenomenal.
Yeah, I agree.
So, if you haven't had a chance to check out Stranger Things, you should definitely do so. Hop on the bandwagon like we eventually did.
Yeah, I completely agree with you on the cast. Those kids really were dynamite. I don't know how they went about casting them and finding them and getting them into like the 80s characters they needed to play. But it was perfect between the three boys. And then, of course, 11 was kind of her own character, but very well captured by that young actress. And it was a treat to see Winona Ryder. I can't remember the last thing I saw her in that was later than the 80s, but it was very fun to see her, play a mom of a kid who'd been kidnapped or snatched or whatever you want to call what he was. So yeah, looking forward to season 2 and hope they get to shooting that before the kids age up too much.
Yeah.
Because they're right at that age.
Yeah.
Had some great writing in it too. There were some great one-off lines that got thrown out there, like, what was it, why are you keeping this curiosity door locked? I wanted a science teacher like him. I had one in the 8th grade, and I would have loved some others. He was really good. So yeah, Stranger Things on Netflix. Give it a look if you have not yet.
Yes. We have also hopped on the bandwagon. The most popular show of the new season.
At least one of the most popular, yeah.
Yes, is called This Is Us. It's a drama on NBC. The commercial came out this summer, and it built a whole bunch of buzz. So we hopped on board. And think it's pretty freaking phenomenal so far.
Yeah,
no complaints.
Given that it's 3 episodes in, and it's been on the cover of Entertainment Weekly, I'm not going to mince about spoilers, but if you haven't seen it and plan to, you might want to skip a little bit. I love the storytelling device that they're using, where the parents are mostly seen back in, like, I guess it's the 80s and late 70s. For them, and the adult children are in the modern time. It's an interesting storytelling device that they're rolling out that I really hope they can kind of keep going for a while. And the casting here, again, too, is wonderful. I love Milo and Mandy as the 1970s/80s parents trying to cope with triplets.
Yeah, it's really good. Give it a look. This Is Us on NBC. Also, all of our regular returning comedies have come back in a big way. Big Bang is really funny. Real O'Neals had a hilarious premiere.
Yeah, they've only had one episode out as we record this, and it was great.
Superstore has a couple of episodes, and they're back in fine form. We've also sampled the new shows, Speechless and The Good Place. Which one do you want to talk about first?
Speechless. I'm in love with this show. I love The Good Place, but I'm in love with Speechless for so many reasons. They've taken a topic that, when you look at the blurb on its surface, family with a special needs child, doesn't seem like comedy material, and yet it is a hoot. Minnie Driver is a frickin' riot as the mom who will do whatever it takes to make sure her son has accessibility. I don't know the actor's name, but it's got Kripke from The Big Bang Theory as the father. And you've just never seen him like this, because he's not Kripke at all.
He's very funny.
But most of all, the young man who is playing... what's his name? Can't think of the kid's name. Oh, well. Who's playing the young man with cerebral palsy. He's outstanding. His facial expressions in particular are... he perfectly punctuates everything with the look on his face, from being completely pissed off to being completely like, yeah, let's go do that. I'm in love with it.
Yeah, Speechless. I've really enjoyed it so far. I'm particularly fond of The Good Place. This is the new comedy starring Kristen Bell and Ted Danson. It's a pretty high concept idea. Kristen Bell has mistakenly ended up in, has died and has ended up in the quote-unquote good place. A place she definitely should not be. She's mistakenly ended up there, and she's trying to cover her tracks to make sure that she stays in the good place. It's a incredibly strange, incredibly funny show. Ted Danson plays the... his name is Michael. I don't think they specifically say he is an angel. He's the designer of the good place, and he oversees the day-to-day operations and lives of everyone under his care. But Kristen Bell's arrival in the good place has started causing problems because she's not necessarily a good person. So shenanigans ensue. It's really incredibly strange and hilarious. I mentioned it reminded me of
Pushing Daisies.
Kind
like
of
a Brian Fuller sort of show.
Yeah, a Brian Fuller show. So
Pushing Daisies, Wonderfalls, that kind of thing.
Yeah. So I'm really enjoying that. And I think Ted Danson is exceptionally funny in a way that we have not seen him before. I think he's really excellent.
Yeah, I like him here because he's playing a character that's very different from any comedy character. It's very different than what he played on Cheers. And of course, lately he's been skewing more towards drama with his stints on the CSI shows.
Yeah.
So it's fun to see him back here and in a whole different comedy light.
Yeah. Also, Crazy Ex-Girlfriend has returned this past Friday, the 21st. Love that show.
Yeah, we didn't get to see the premiere yet, but we're so looking forward to seeing where it picks up.
Can't wait to see what's going on season 2. And of course, as longtime listeners of this show, you probably know that we have been watching The Voice and loving The Voice. It's going really well so far this season.
Yeah, I love Miley and Alicia. They're great coaches. They kind of threw Adam and Blake some curveballs there in how things will work on the show now that there are 2 strong women and not just one sitting in the chairs next to them, and good singers all around that have been making it through so far. And of course, we're big fans also of the superheroes on the CW. Those 4 shows have all come back within the last couple weeks. For me, I think what I like so far the best, and I know we disagree here a little bit, we've both liked Supergirl, and it's one outing back so far. The addition of Superman was great, and Tyler Hoechlin is kind of perfect as Clark, I think. Going back to the Clark that Christopher Reeve played, and not some of these unfortunate things that we've had going on in the DC movies lately. And I liked where the Flash has been so far with its Flashpoint story, with Barry having completely mucked things up more than once now with the timeline. For Arrow, I didn't so much care for the first episode, but the second one kind of pulled me back in a little bit. And Legends came back in a way I didn't expect it to, because I was about to jettison that show last year because it was just murky. But they've made some tweaks that I think may help it survive and be something I like to watch. Anything you want to add to the superhero brigade?
No, not really.
Well, all right then. We will move on to reviews. You've read Another Dreamspun Desire.
Yeah, I had been catching up on some of those. I fell behind a little bit this past summer. Recently, I read Stranded with Desire by Vivien Dean and Rick Reed. This is the story of a fancy CEO named Maine and his personal assistant Colby. They are returning home from a business trip, and they crash in the Pacific North. Their plane crashes in the Pacific Northwest, and they have to make it back to civilization alive. So that was an entertaining story and setup for their eventual romance. The book isn't really necessarily about their falling in love necessarily. It's more about them coming to terms with their feelings for one another. I mean, before the plane crash, they were head over heels for one another, but they didn't tell the other person, and were keeping things strictly professional. Which is, of course, the responsible thing to do. So when they crash and are thrown together into this life or death situation, their true feelings come to light, and they explore those feelings once they get back to civilization. Plus, there is the wrinkle in their perfect romance that Maine is engaged to a lovely lady.
Whoa.
Whoa! Back in Chicago. So they have to navigate those waters. Anyway, I enjoyed Colby and Maine an awful lot, and I look forward to future books from Vivien and Rick. I think it was a good one.
I'm going to throw a curveball question at you.
What's that?
So I know you also did that with the audiobook.
I did.
How was the audio portion of that story?
I thought it was, in this particular instance, it was good. Okay. Not necessarily great. I listened to this audiobook while I was on the treadmill, and this is just a weird quirk of mine. I listened to it, and I read it with the book in front of me. I am a visual person, so listening to a book doesn't necessarily mean I'm gonna get it or comprehend the entire experience.
Mm-hmm. You're not the only person I know that does that.
So yeah. So that was just my weird quirk of how I read this particular story.
Okay. So I've also read a book. We talked about this a little bit last episode. I got to read TJ's new book, Murmuration. Mm-hmm. Which he will talk about coming up here shortly in our interview segment. As I said towards the end of episode 54, it is one of my favorite books of the year so far, and maybe even extending beyond that. The more I've thought about the writing of it, and the way that TJ managed to put this story to the page, mm-hmm. it's just really extraordinary to me. I mean, it's up there with some of the stuff that I've read, like Stephen King, where he builds out these elaborate things that you get to read. And you could tell that there's thought put into it, and a lot of stuff goes into the story, but yet the characters are what shine through. I absolutely love Mike and Sean. I think their romance is just wonderful to read. It's very hard to review this book because you don't want to give spoilers on anything, because it's really, if you think about movies like The Sixth Sense or The Crying Game or how people treated the Harry Potter books, where it's like you want everybody to have that first time read experience, mm-hmm. without going, oh, I already know about that, so that's not a surprise. It was such a delight to see how the story just kept building on itself and where it was going to go. And you'd think about it and be like, well, that's kind of like what I've seen over here. Could it be something like this movie or this TV show or this book or this plot?
Okay.
And then find out that, oh, no, it's not like that at all. So, yeah, I'm being deliberately cagey on what I'm going to say here. All I'll say is that it's a tremendously well-written book. I would aspire myself as an author to be able to lay out something as complex as this is and have it pay off like this book does. I see exactly why TJ says that it's the most romantic book that he's written, because the romance, as I said, between Mike and Sean is a beautiful thing to read. I like the 1954 era in general. I've talked about that actually back when I was on the Rope podcast, because they asked about an era in time that I thought was great. And there's a lot about the way we treated each other in general in the 50s that I like a lot. If you can manage to pluck out racism and, if you pluck out the nasty bits and keep Pleasantville, that's kind of a nice era. Or the sweeping Douglas Sirk movies, or,
You mean nothing that existed?
Nothing that existed, but everything you would have had existed when people talk about the good old days.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, read this book and get on the bandwagon for how awesome this book is. I wrote a little bit more over on jeffandwill.com, but not much more. And of course, TJ is going to talk a little bit about it in the review. The book comes out Friday, October 28th, so just a few days away from when this podcast initially comes out. And I think it's so worth your time. And I will say this, if you read Murmuration and you want to talk about it, because you should keep the secrets, drop me a line, jeffandwill@biggayfictionpodcast.com, and I'd be happy to chat with other people who've read the book so I can talk to somebody about what I've read.
Okay.
Because Will here hasn't read it yet either.
No.
But I hope you do. Okay. So, all that to nice lead up to the fact that I got to talk to TJ about the book and about what life is like for him as a currently full-time author. Mm-hmm. He's managed to get 5 books out this year. Most of those were written actually before he became a full-time author, but he's also planning 5 for next year that are already on the calendar and that he's been talking about with folks. So let's go to TJ's interview. I'm excited to welcome TJ Klune to the podcast. When TJ was 8, he picked up a pen and paper and began to write his first story. Now, over 2 decades later, the cast of characters in his head have only gotten louder. But that's okay, because he's recently become a full-time writer and can give them the time they deserve. Since being published, TJ has won the Lambda Literary Award for Best Gay Romance and was chosen by Amazon as having written one of the best GLBT books of 2011. His latest book, Murmuration, comes out October 28th. TJ, thanks for being with us.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
So, I've read Murmuration, one of the lucky few who got an advance copy. I loved it. I don't know how to talk about it. So I'm going to make you talk about it.
Right, that's good. And you were one of the few that got advanced copies because we actually limited the amount of advanced reader copies that went out or the review copies that went out this time around, just because I wanted to keep it as close to my chest as possible without revealing too much. But Murmuration, it's a book that I wrote last year for National Novel Writing Month at NaNoWriMo. I'd never done it before, and a friend of mine, author S.A. McCauley, wanted me to try it with her, so I said, oh, whatever, deadlines, they suck. That's why my publisher never gives me deadlines, so whatever. And she convinced me, so I said, sure, let's just see how it goes. So I sat down and I wrote the entire 106,000 words in 27 days.
Wow, so you did 2 nanos in a month.
Yeah, I did. That one book, it came out faster than almost every other book I've ever written before. But Murmuration is essentially my love letters to 1950s Americana, because I have a huge fascination and appreciation for post-war America and how we were in the 1950s. It's that idyllic time that I think is very romanticized in media, in movies, magazines, books. It's something that I've always wanted to get into. I dabbled in it a little bit with my novella, John and Jackie. That time period was sort of addressed, but I kept that appropriately vague. But with Murmuration, I knew that I wanted to get actually, this is my cat. Interrupt, that's what she does. Come on back. I wanted to get actually very deep into it, because I knew that if I was going to write about time period 1954, that I was going to have to I wasn't going to be able to cut corners with that, because you have to make sure that the timing is appropriate or that the language is appropriate. Any products used, mentioned, are appropriate. So I had to get into that. But Murmuration is my love letter to the 1950s. It's my fascination with black and white, like so-called monster movies that are an allegory for like communism and the Red Scare and stuff like that. So kind of what I was going for, that kind of whole feel with the novel.
Yeah, and I can see all of those things kind of mesh together. Now, you wrote it during Nano, and 107,000 words during Nano is insane. What was your process for writing the book? Did you have all the research and everything ready to go? or
Yes, and because I knew that I was going to be. I had just finished writing Wolf Song. I was not really sure what my next project was going to be, and I've been playing around with the idea of writing a book in the 1950s for a long time. So I had plenty of research already up and ready to go. But then this idea came into my head after GRL last year. I just got this random idea of this book that eventually became Murmuration, and it was I knew the beginning of the book and I knew the ending of the book. The ending is something that has not changed at all. The last 3 or 4 paragraphs of Murmuration are word for word what I had written at the very beginning. I wrote the ending of the book at the beginning because I wanted to get to that point, and that remained unchanged. But there's a lot of research that goes into this book, and there's a reason why for it, which obviously people will see when they read it. But yes, all of that was completely done before I started, and then I wrote, I think, typically now I write 4 days a week and take 3 days off. But when I was writing that book, I wrote 7 days a week just because I couldn't get the idea out of my head.
That's awesome. Now, you've said it's a love letter to the 50s. Is there anything else you want to say about what it's about that's not in the blurb? Or are we just going to... Does everybody just need to go look at it? Which I think they kind of do.
It's so hard to talk about without attempting to spoil it for anybody. I mean, even the blurb I was a little bit about. But essentially what it comes down to is my goal with Murmuration was to write not just a romance, but something that was sweet and innocent, almost like I felt like the time period kind of was. I think that there's an almost naivete to the two characters, and they're wrapped in this little bubble of themselves. And in the end, my main goal by the end of Murmuration was to, as I've said before, write the most romantic thing I've ever written. And it's not the fiery passion, I think, of first meetings and stuff like that. I think this book is more of a crescendo, that it starts off quiet, but by the very end it's think people will see once they get to that point.
Mm-hmm. Now,
and I think that's really all I can say on it.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. You said it's probably not a book for all of your readers. What kind of reader do you think will enjoy this the most?
I think readers that enjoy books that have twists and turns in it, because this is not going to be a straightforward narrative. I think that it could even go to the point, maybe an extreme end, of saying that it's an unreliable narrator. But it's going to be people who I think the big thing is going to be people who like solving puzzles, because the book itself is, I give out pieces at a time, and I put it to the reader to try to put those pieces together. And I think that I wanted people to think it's going a specific direction, and then wanting to kind of knock them off their feet when they find out that maybe that's kind of correct, but in the end there's this whole bigger picture of what it actually was.
Now, if you had to play like the Amazon algorithm and you were posed with the question, if you liked blank, you'll like Murmuration, what goes in that blank, either in your catalog or in literature overall?
That's going to be tough, because that could go into spoiler. You know what? I'll say, like, if you liked Memento, or the Christopher Nolan and the other Christopher Nolan movie Inception, or if you love like me, I love. I'm a big old sap when it comes to this, but I love like the whole 1950s black and white romance, the big sweeping movies where at the very end there's the big musical score and everybody's dancing and stuff like that. That's kind of the feel that I'm going for. But I think that a big inspiration for the book could be said to be in the vein of like Memento.
Okay. What was your process for writing this? We touched on it a little bit, but it sounds like you didn't even have that much prep time because you said it came to you at GRL last year. And of course, that's mid-October, and you're taking off writing in November. Was this pantsing, or did you have a lot of plot down?
Halfway through the book, I realized that to get to the end point of where I wanted to be, I needed to take a step back and make sure that the path that I was on was the right one. Because with a book this intricate, you have to have every piece and part firmly in place. You can't cut corners. You can't be. My biggest concern for this book, I think my biggest worry was plot holes that you could drive a bus through. Because if you find a plot hole that's something that is missed, then it kind of completely ruins the experience, I think, for the reader. So I at the beginning, I wrote like a man possessed and kept on going for 2 weeks. And then I got to the midweek point, or the mid-month point, and I said, wait a minute, I think like maybe a quarter of this absolutely does not make sense. So I had to stop for a day or two, and I went back and was bitching myself out because it was terrible. It was terrible what I was trying to do. It made no sense what I was trying to do. So I stopped and course corrected, and it was tough because I had to cut out a bunch of stuff that I thought was pretty darn good writing, but it wasn't right for the book. It didn't fit. So I had to get rid of it and put myself back on the right path. But it took only those 27 days to write it. But I mean, we're talking, and that was when I was still working. We were talking, I would go to work from like 6 to 5, and then I'd get home and I'd write until like 2 o'clock in the morning. Mm-hmm. So this was like 8 hour writing days, 27 days in a row. So it was hard, but I think that at the very beginning I knew what I wanted to do with it, and I just incorporated all the research that I'd already done.
Now, for most people, they get through Nano and they've got this first draft, and then it's a matter of all the fixes and edits and getting it all together again. How was the edit process after your first draft for you? And I'm not talking like when Dreamspinner gets it and starts doing all their stuff, but before you submitted it.
It was terrible because I think I'm thinking that I have this great story, and I get to my ending point, with the ending that I wrote at the beginning, and I'm like, oh my God, this is so awesome. I got to this exact point that I wanted to get at. I'm going through, and I was like, what the hell was I thinking? I had to cut out, just stuff that just didn't make sense. Like, I think there was a point where I tried to make myself too clever. Like I tried to make it too much of a puzzle, and it showed. And I had to tell myself to calm my tits, because that wasn't something that I needed to do. I needed to be very objective about it. I can be my harshest critic when I need to be. So I was able to take a step back and tell myself, look, you need to. This is going to work. You need to make it better. You need to stop trying to be, you're not as clever as you think you are. So, you kind of take a step back and fix what needs to be fixed. Mm-hmm.
Now, you've been writing full-time since February. And
yes.
So it's about 9 months in as we're talking in October. How's that been?
It's been the best decision of my freaking life, man. That's look, I worked in an office job in a cubicle at an insurance company for 10 years. I started there when I was 23, and I was in Tucson for 7 years and then here for 3 years. And my job was essentially, I worked in auto insurance claims. Like if you got into an accident and you killed someone or somebody was suing you, that's the type of claim that I would handle. And it was killing my soul because it got to the point of where I would just be sitting at work, staring at my computer screen, slack-jawed, in my tiny little cubicle filled with my knickknacks that I had accumulated over 10 years of being in an office. And it grated on me. So I started planning, and because I'm a very meticulous planner. I have to, if I was going to do this, I had to commit to it and make sure that I had a nest egg set aside in case I failed spectacularly. But once I made that decision, I committed to it, and best decision I've ever made for myself. Hands down, completely best decision I've ever made.
That's awesome. Has anything been particularly surprising about being the full-time writer over the last few months?
I thought that the newness of it, the idea of it, would wear off rather quickly. Like that, my final day was on a Thursday, and I took the Friday off from doing anything, and I told myself I was going to start writing on Monday, and I did, and it was awesome. And then I thought that as the week went on, or the next week went by, that it was going to wear off the whole idea of, oh my God, I'm doing this. But it hasn't. Every day that I get up and write, it's awesome. It's absolutely, I mean, my output in the last 9 months has been probably more than my past 3 years combined. So it's insane. It's absolutely intense that I'm able to do this, and I'm greatly appreciative of my readers supporting me, making me be able to do this, because without them, I wouldn't be able to be where I am right now.
Mm-hmm. What's your daily routine the 4 days that you are writing?
I get up at 5:30 in the morning. Still, I am at the computer by 6:30, and I'll review for half an hour or so. I'll review the previous day's work, and then I'll sit and write until probably about 2 or 3 o'clock every day. Or Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, I usually go back and edit what I've written in the week before. But I'm averaging now, on a good day, 10,000 words a day, and on a off day, I can probably get about 5, 6, 7,000. So I'm a machine right now, and I really thought that would. I really thought that would wane. I really thought that would be something that would be affected. But if anything, my output is increased. And I mean, I've got so many freaking ideas that I want to do, but I have so many series that I have to finish before I can do anything else. So,
right.
But it's it's most weekdays I'm at the computer bright and early and finishing up in the afternoon, and that's what I do daily now.
That's awesome. What kind of advice would you have for authors in our genre who are looking to go full time?
You got to make sure that you're prepared to commit to it. If you're going to do this, you have to do what you say you're going to do. I mean, I think there's days when I wake up, it's a Monday morning, and my alarm is ringing at 5:30, and I'm thinking, oh, well, you know what? Last week I wrote, 40,000 words. I could take today off. I don't need to do this, but you can't do that. I mean, this is once you leave that job, that security behind, you have to keep writing, because that's going to be your only income. Another big thing that I think that a lot of people don't realize too is that royalties tend to come quarterly. So you're not getting a paycheck every week or every other week like you normally would. So it's a very good idea to have a savings account, with as much saved as you possibly can, because you never know what kind of emergency will happen. Mm-hmm. Maybe you didn't have a good sales quarter, and you can't, you don't have that money coming in. So you need to be able to have that nest egg set aside. That's the biggest thing that I did, was I saved as much money as I possibly could and just set it aside, and haven't touched it for anything, because it's going to be there in case something goes wrong. I've been fortunate so far, obviously, with sales, but you gotta plan for every eventuality. I mean, maybe by this time next year I'll have crash and burn and have to get a job. But as of right now, I'm doing pretty good.
Yeah. And even with the quarterly thing, life could happen in between the quarters. Even if you're selling right, then you need that money all of a sudden, like anybody.
Yeah. I mean, you have to. It's kind of redundant to say, but you have to plan for the unknown. It's stuff could happen that you don't even think about, but it's something that I think I would even if something were to happen, say next year, where I have to go back to work, I have to find another job, I will not regret this time that I've had. This has been the best time of my life so far.
I want that so bad. No, I was like, I want TJ's life. You mentioned recently on Facebook that How to Be a Normal Person might become a movie, which is awesome and exciting.
That's
and
so
I'm saying awesome way too much in this interview. It's just
that's totally okay. That is one of my.
Anything new to report at all with that situation?
No, not really. It's I mean, I'm gonna sound like I'm all Hollywood, even though I have no idea what I'm talking about. It's these, from what I understand, this process can take a long time for it to actually go through. And even when and if a production company acquires the rights, that means that the rights are theirs. So technically, they don't even have to do anything with them if they don't want to. I mean, there's production companies that'll acquire rights for books that haven't even come out yet, and then nothing gets made with them. I'm hoping that obviously that's not what happens here, but it's a long, drawn out process, and I think it's something that we have to be patient for, which is not one of my fortes, unfortunately. But the very idea that this is even a possibility just blows my mind. I mean, it's phenomenal that something like this could even happen. And I say that's for me because, it's my book, but at the same time, I think it could be big for our genre too, because, if this happens, if it goes through, if it gets made, and if it's any kind of success, that could potentially open the doors for other books in the MM genre to be optioned for films or whatever. Or like even freaking Lightning Struck Heart is being made into a stage play. I mean, that's there's all these different avenues of media that could be explored, I think, and I'm hoping that this will open doors for other people should it go through.
I didn't know about Lightning. I think that's exciting.
Yeah, it's it's kind of odd. Like it's in Spain that they're optioning for it, so it's going to be in Spanish, and just the idea of the Lightning Struck Heart being made into a play is just more power to them. I'm all there. I'm going to be there opening night. I have no problem with that whatsoever. But the logistics behind that book being made into a play of some kind, I can't wait to see what they do. I'm not going to be able to understand it, but I just can't wait to see what's going to happen. It's going to be fantastic. So, but I mean, that's just another form of media that I think that will hopefully help us. I mean, you have so many TV shows and stuff like that just forego actual television and get streamed online and stuff like that. And I can see some books that I've read in our genre being made into shows, movies, or something that you can stream online. I mean, it's not just a movie doesn't have to go to a theater and be successful. That's not what the model is anymore.
Right. And in some cases, it's better not to go to the theater, I think.
Right. And I mean, my biggest concern with it is twofold. One is the whole asexuality aspect of it. That has to stay in. Otherwise, I would rather have the whole thing collapse than have them write that out. But two, if you go on Netflix and you look up the GLBT or LGBT movies they have on there, a lot of them are crap. Let's face it. A lot of them are unfortunately crap. And they look cheap. The acting is terrible, and that's something that I want to avoid. I don't want, if this is going to happen, I want it to be the best that it can be.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. In your dream casting, who are Gus and Casey? If you could have just anybody out there.
See, that's the problem with something like that. There are writers that they base their characters off of people. And when they like character models and stuff like that, I can't do that because it will mess with my head a little bit. That this is who they're supposed to be and this is what they act like and blah, blah. And I can't do that with casting either. I've been asked that question about like Bear Otter and the Kid when that first came out. With almost every subsequent book I've had written, I've been asked, if this were to be made into a movie, who would you want it to be? And I have no idea. Like, I have absolutely no idea. I will say one thing, though, and this is probably going to tick off a few people. When I announced that that Normal Person was going to be made into a movie, people were talking about casting and stuff like that. And there were suggestions that a few people agreed with that, God, what was his name? Jim Parsons?
Oh, Sheldon from Big Bang Theory.
Yeah, that he should be Gus. First and foremost, I have no idea who that was when they said Jim Parsons. And I was like, okay, who is that? Whatever. And they're like, Big Bang Theory. And I said, I've never seen that TV show. I don't know who that is. And so I looked him up. Isn't he like 40? Because I don't, absolutely not. There's, sorry for the people that wanted that to happen, but absolutely not. Gus is not that man. he's not Jim Parsons. He's old. He's absolutely far too old to play that character. Granted, he may be the best actor in the world. I've never seen him, I don't think, in anything, but it won't be him. But other than that, honestly, I think that if they're going to if this is going to be made, I'd like to see a bunch of unknowns. Or, I would be totally happy with Betty White playing one of the We Three Queens. I have no problem with that whatsoever.
Oh.
She would love Betty White, if you ever see this, please be one of my Vespa riding, pink jacket wearing ladies in their gang. Please be one of the We Three Queens. I would love Betty White to do that forever. That would be the only person that I could actually say I would want cast in the movie.
I can get behind that casting.
Oh my God, wouldn't that be awesome? That would be so cool to have that happen. I would absolutely love that if they were able to get somebody like her for that. Other than that, I would want it to be a bunch of unknowns. Like, just because I don't want like a viewing experience of that movie to be distracted by somebody's celebrity. But aside from Betty White, because she's Betty White.
Yeah. So, Murmuration is your 5th book this year. What's coming in 2017 that the world can look forward to?
Got 5 books coming out in 2017. And the way that it's going now, and don't, hold me to this in case I am a liar and a fat mouth, but I may try to do 5 books a year from this point on, crossing my fingers. But next year, February, is the 3rd book in the Tell Me It's Real series. And that's called Until You. April, I have a book called Olive Juice, and I am going to be as secretive about that book as I have been about Murmuration, because it's a book that I thought about releasing under a different name because it's so completely different than anything that I've written before. It's a romance, and it's about 2 guys in their 50s, but it's different for me. But in the end, I decided to keep it under my own name, just because I think that people will hopefully appreciate the differences versus the books that have come before. So I'll talk more about that down the road. But after that is in June is the sequel to Lightning Struck Heart, A Destiny of Dragons. August, for the 6th anniversary of the first book, is The Last Bear Otter and the Kid book. And then in October or November is the 3rd book in the Lightning series. And all of those books are done and have been completed. So yeah, 5 books next year. Each book comes out the same month as I had books come out this year. I don't know why it worked out that way, but that's how it's going to be. So maybe that'll just be my time period from this point on.
Yeah, Dreamspin will just have you penciled into those slots, and those will be TJ months.
Exactly.
What is the best way for people to keep up with you online so they can know everything going on?
Yep, I'm on Facebook. I have my author page and my regular page. I don't know why I have two pages. I just do.
Because we're supposed to.
Yeah, I tend to forget my author page, so forgive me if there's months that go by between me posting on it. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Instagram, or you can just email me at tjklunebooks@yahoo.com. That's one thing I do want to say. Since I started this whole process of being an author, I remember when my book came out on Bear Out and Their Kid came out on a Friday in 2011, in August of 2011. I woke up Saturday morning and had my very first piece of fan mail, an email from a reader who had read the book. And I have gotten countless emails from people, but each one is like, I'm getting it for the first time again. Because that's something I never ever expected when I published a book, was to be able to hear from readers all over the world, frankly. And it's awesome. And I really, really, truly appreciate the time that people take out of their day when they sit down on the computer and write to me about something. So thank you for everybody who has ever written me any kind of email about my books, because it truly makes my day.
That's tremendous. That's very cool. We will link up to all of your social media and websites, as well as to Murmuration, so people can pick that up and everything else that's out there on Amazon.
October 8th comes out. Be ready. It's a Friday.
Just a few days from when this goes out, because this will come out on Monday and the book will be out on Friday. Oh
yeah. So it's oh man, I can't wait for people to read this book. It's going to be hysterical.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it too, actually, to kind of see how people react.
Talk with people about it, right?
How they choose to talk about it and not give anything away.
Oh, there's gonna be those people though that are gonna end up ruining it for everybody. And I'm telling you right now, if I find out who those people are, man, I'm not gonna do anything. But I'm just gonna probably in my head think, you bastard, why would you do that? But no, seriously, big thing, folks. Before we end this, reading Murmuration, I want everybody to have the same experience when reading it for the first time. So don't be a dick and ruin it for anybody else, because that's a douchebag move to do. So just let people have their own experience reading it, and talk about it when they're done reading it. That's totally okay with me. Just don't ruin it for anybody else. Thanks.
Yeah, I concur with you completely. TJ, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
So thanks very much to TJ for taking some time and talking about Murmuration, or in some cases not talking about Murmuration. As he said, he's looking forward to seeing how people react to the book as well, because he does expect a portion of his audience to go, "What the hell? What are you doing?" It was interesting to me to learn, too, in the interview, that he wrote that during NaNoWriMo. You may have heard, and I mentioned in the interview, that the Murmuration is 107,000 words, so he essentially did 2 Nano books in
the month of November.
November, because Nano is a 50,000 word goal during the month. So he essentially wrote 2 books and a little bit more. And I suspect he wrote a lot more, because there was also a comment that he made about words that he threw away about halfway through, because he figured out he wasn't quite on the right path. That's a big inspiration to me, because during that Nano period, he was not full-time yet. He was still working about an 11-hour day, and then coming home and writing 6 to 8 hours at night, and then sleeping whatever was left and starting over again, and writing 7 days a week to help keep his word count up. So I think that's an extraordinary Nano, and especially to have it be a Nano project that turned into a book. Because we've heard, from other places, people who do Nano in a day and, do all these crazy things, but yet that never comes out as a book. But here's a book that was written in Nano, a really long book that then turned around and came out as a book in a pretty short order afterwards. And of course, Nano starts in about, this is coming out on the 24th, so Nano starts in about a week and a day from when this podcast drops. We're planning our Nano projects. We're going joint this year for the first time to try and write what will be the first of a trilogy that we're working on.
Yeah.
Now, long-time listeners will know that Nano stresses Will out.
It does. I'm trepidatious. Yeah.
And I'm trying to tell him not to be, because we're in it together this time.
Yes, that's very true. I have your full support.
Yes.
That doesn't mean that I'm not freaked out.
I understand. We will do your best to not have you freaked out through the month.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, we'll be doing more in-depth stuff on Nano a little bit next week, because next week will be the start of Nano. And then going through November as we record, we'll kind of let you know where we are in the writing process. Because we're also in Nano, we're also figuring out how to co-write together for the first time.
Yeah, I think the anxiety that I'm experiencing now is just, the general anxiety I would always feel about a project of this size. I'm sure my anxieties will change and morph throughout the month. We have to learn how to co-write together.
Mm-hmm.
We have to learn how to write when you are out of town. You're going to be headed to LA during a portion of November, so it'll be an interesting growing experience. Let's call it that.
Yeah, and I think it'll be a good growing experience. I think currently I'm not trepidatious at all. The only thing I'm worried about in general is just getting our outline done ahead of the first, so we know where we're going. Because I think once we know where we're going, we will get there as fast as possible.
Yeah.
And there's no pressure in this case if we don't exit November with 50K. We'll exit November with something, and then we'll just keep going to finish the book. Because 50K will be about where we want to land. So
yeah, for this particular project. So, so I guess we'll see, and we'll keep everyone up to date on our progress, both good and bad, I guess. Even though I probably won't want to talk about the bad.
I'll force it out.
Yeah. You and your dadgun honesty. What the hell?
So I think that does it for 55.
Yeah.
What's coming up next week?
Next week, in episode number 56, we're going to have our GRL recap, and we're going to celebrate the 1-year anniversary of the Big Gay Fiction Podcast.
Woohoo! Bring your party hats. And we'll celebrate Halloween a little bit, too, because the episode will actually drop on Halloween.
Halloween Day. So, get your... I'm not very good at celebrating Halloween, so I'm not sure what I'm going to tell people to go get.
Not either. Bring your candy. Whether it's you're listening to us on that Monday and haven't given it out yet, have a couple pieces of candy, or if you've got leftover, indulge in some while you listen to the podcast that week. How's that?
Yes. Indulge in the podcast, indulge in some sweets, and
maybe some birthday cake. Why not?
Yeah.
For an anniversary.
Yeah. That would be good.
Yeah. All right. You guys have a good week, and we'll see you back here for 56.
Thank you for listening to Jeff and Will's Big Gay Fiction Podcast. New episodes are available every Monday at iTunes and other major podcast outlets. While there, subscribe to the show and please consider leaving a review. For detailed show notes, links, and to sign up for the monthly newsletter, visit biggayfictionpodcast.com.
Coming up on this week's show, TJ Klune is here to talk about his new novel, Murmuration. Plus, we talk about the fall TV we've been
We talking about talking.
Coming up on this week's show, TJ Klune is here to talk about his new novel, Murmuration. Plus, we recap the fall TV we've been watching. We've been watching.
Okay,
here we go. One more time. See, you're working out just fine.
It's because you're silly.
Coming up on this week's show, TJ Klune is here to talk about his new book, Murmuration. Plus, we talk about the fall... Now we're talking again.